The next psalm is Psalm 38. And this is a very personal psalm of David. It talks about his sin and his deep distress because of his sin. Now, it is interesting to note that the Hebrew title of this psalm is Lament of the Transgressed One. And the word transgressed, there is a technical word in the Old Testament for someone who has committed a sexual sin, an act of sexual immorality. So David here is lamenting over his sexual sin. We know from the Old Testament that he committed this sin with Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. He had her brought into his palace, slept with her, and then tried to cover up his sin by having her husband, Uriah, get drunk and then go and sleep with him so that the child that was conceived could be passed off as Uriah's. But the whole thing was exposed by the prophet Nathan in 2 Samuel chapter 12. Now, listen, before we dive into the text, I need to say this. If you or someone you know is struggling with sexual sin, whether it's pornography or sexual immorality, I want to tell you that God still has a way for you. God still loves you, and God can still forgive you. There's a lot of people who think that if they confess their sin, then God will be angry at them, and that will cause a break in their relationship with God. No, God doesn't feel that way. In fact, the opposite is true. When you confess your sin, you can actually experience what it means to have peace with God and forgiveness from God. And so, let's dive into the text now. Notice verse 1. O Lord, do not rebuke me in your wrath, for in your anger your judgments are. What does that mean? You know, when someone is angry, sometimes what they'll do is they'll just start attacking everything. They'll attack their spouse, their children, their friends, whatever is around them. They're just lashing out and rebuking everything. And that's what David is saying here. Don't do that to me, God. Don't just lash out at me and rebuke me in your wrath. Rebuke me, yes, but don't rebuke me in your wrath. In other words, don't attack me indiscriminately while you're angry. Instead, David says in verse 2, Know, O Lord, that it is you who did me this evil. I am not rebellious, O Lord, nor a son of disobedience. This is really important. The point that David is making here is that he understands that ultimately he is responsible for his actions. He didn't blame Satan. He didn't blame Bathsheba. He didn't blame anyone else. He said, Look, God, I know that it was you that allowed me to do this evil, but the responsibility ultimately is mine. I chose to do this evil. I am not a rebellious person, God. I am not a son of disobedience. Then he goes on to describe his physical symptoms. It says in verse 3, In hope, the appointed time to heal me, for you, O Lord, have brought me down into the pit of destruction. In hope, my soul will draw water. He says, Look, God, I know that you have brought me to this place of destruction, but I'm hoping that you would heal me. I am hoping that you would bring me out of this destruction and help my soul to draw water, to be refreshed and Then he describes his deep anguish in verses 4 to 6. And he says that his sin has become a heavy burden for him, a weight that is too much for him to carry. Then in verse 7, he says, My heart is weary, O God, weary by the multitude of my complaints, and my throat is parched by the voice of my groaning. He says, God, I just want to cry out to you, but I'm so tired of crying out. My heart is so weary because of all of the complaints that I have against you. My throat is so parched because of all of the groaning that I've been doing. And Sir David here, though he's saying these things, also understood that ultimately God is the one that he needs to repent towards. And so he says in verse 8, For the multitude of my iniquities, God, for the great depth of my sins, for my transgressions against you only have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight. It wasn't just against Uriah or against Bathsheba that I sinned. No, I sinned against you, God, I did what was evil in your sight. So a couple of lessons. Number one, when we sin, we need to own it. We need to come to God and we need to say, God, I did this. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Don't try to blame it on someone else. David didn't do that. He took responsibility for his actions. Number two, when we sin, we need to repent of it. We need to turn from it. And notice, the word repent actually comes from the word teshuva, which literally means a change of mind and action. So when we repent, it's not just a change of mind, but it's a change of action as well. We need to turn from our sin and not do it again. That's what it means to repent. Well, thanks for joining me today as we go through the book of Psalms. Remember, like, share, and subscribe so that more people can hear and see these videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.